Hey, Cub fans! Thanks for joining us here on Cubs 24/7, where Randy talks Cubs with delight and optimism. And I've got I think it's I don't know, maybe it could be potentially boring session for you guys. I normally don't like to do a lot of stats, but there's going to be a lot of stats in this particular video, and I can't help it. The way it happened was I had Aramis Ramirez on my mind, and I don't know, it's been a few days now, and I just was thinking about Rami and how much I enjoyed watching him play, and I thought, well, he's really underrated. You don't really hear much about Aramis Ramirez, and he's sort of been, I think, forgotten. And I was just thinking, well, he was really good. I wonder how good he was. So I decided to start diving into it. So I took a look at Aramis Ramirez's numbers, and turned out they're phenomenal. I mean, before I looked at him, I knew he was good. I watched him play a lot. He was really a very good Cub, and I knew he was productive, but I didn't know he was productive at this level. So when I looked at it, I decided, well, let me see how that compares to Ron Santo, Hall of Fame Ron Santo's numbers, and I'm going to share those with you today. These numbers are phenomenal. And as I was diving in, just doing some research, you kind of, one thing leads to the next. And I came across another interesting tidbit that I think you're going to enjoy. And it has to do with how hard it is to find a third baseman. Cubs have gone through a ton of third basemen. And I'm just going to break it down for you. Ron Santo anchored down third base from basically 1960 to 1973, 14 years. And he just sort of, Santa was my first third baseman. And, he's locked in every day. He's in the lineup, and he anchors it. And it turns out that from 1973 until Aramis Ramirez shows up at third base for the Cubs in '03, the Cubs used exactly 117 different third basemen. That just blew my mind. And I think about it, I go, well, that's right. Before I start giving you some of these names, ask yourself, well, how many third basemen do you think pop into your head between Ron Santo and Aramis Ramirez from the start of the '74 season until Rami showed up in '03? It was 117. And what I thought I would do is, just for fun, just kind of talk about how that played out. So Santo was traded to the White Sox prior to the '74 season. So Ron played 14 years with the Cubs, had that 1 year with the White Sox, didn't do much, hit 4 bombs, not much to it. So Ron Santo's career was pretty much 100% with the Cubs. And in 1974, when we traded him, we had acquired Bill Madlock. Now, I remember Bill, and I was 12 years old. And Bill Madlock was really good. He played 3 years for the Cubs. He was the batting champion in '75 and '76. Dude hit .313, .354, and .339 with the Cubs. And he wasn't, I wouldn't call him a Gold Glover at third base, but he was more than serviceable. And it looked like, well, we go right from Santo right into Bill Madlock, and it didn't turn out. So, I don't want to get into the contract issues, but it was a money situation. Madlock wanted to get paid. Cubs brass back then didn't see it, so they traded Bill Madlock, thinking, well, we had Santo for 14 years, and we got Madlock. Maybe it's easy to get a third baseman. So in before the '77 season, they traded for Steve Ontiveros, and I remember Ontiveros very well. And Steve Ontiveros played third base for the Cubs for 4 years, '77 to 1980, and he was a decent average guy. He hit .278 for the Cubs during that 4-year stint, but no slug. He had a .379 slug. Not really any pop at all. But he did give us 4 years, and he wasn't Madlock. Of course, he wasn't Santo. So to me, it was a deterioration from Santo to Madlock down to Steve Ontiveros. And then from there, it really gets squirrely. in the '81 season, it was Ken Wrights. We had acquired Ken Wrights from the Cardinals, and that was in the Suter deal. And Ken Wrights comes over, and in 1981 he hits 215. It was just a bomb. And from there, I'm just going to start reading you some names. Some names you maybe remember, some you'll have no idea who they are. And I'm not going to do the whole 117. I'll give you 48 of them, and many of them you won't remember. So I'll highlight a couple of the ones that I think maybe we do. But from Ken Wrights, it goes Mike Simber. Manny Trio played some third base, but Manny Trio was more of a slick fielding second baseman. So Manny played for the Cubs in '75, from '75 to '78, and then again from '86 to '88. But Manny Trio was a second baseman. If you've never seen Manny Trio highlights of him throwing the ball, check it out. He had a tremendous arm. He threw three-quarter, maybe even sidearm, and just a quick release. Very, very interesting release and very fun to watch play. Next, Ty Walker, Ed Putman, Matt Alexander. One of my favorites, Carmen Fanzone. Not very good back when the Cubs were bad. Then in '83 we had Ron Cey. Now Ron Cey was an all-star. He was a World Series champion with the Dodgers. Unfortunately, we got Ron Cey beyond his prime. Ron Cey played third base for us in '83, '84, '85, and '86. So we had him for 4 years, and very serviceable. But he was 35 years old when we got him. So we had him at 35, 36, 37, and 38 years old. And he was good, but he wasn't Ron Cey. He hit 254 for us and hit 84 home runs during that time. He was, however, the third baseman on the '84 team that won the division. So he at least gave us something. But we had a beyond prime Ron Cey, and we only had him for 4 years. So we move on. Ron Dunn, Mike Adams, Rodney Scott, Luis Salazar, Mick Kelleher, Rudy Meoli, Lenny Randall, Fritz Connolly, Wayne Tyrone, Junior Kennedy, Dave Owen, Richie Hebner. Ryne Sandberg played some third base. Of course, Ryne moved to second shortly thereafter. On that '84 team, our right fielder was Keith Moreland. And Keith played some third base, as you might recall, but primarily Keith was in right field. We had Todd Zeal, Vance Law, Steve Buechele, Dave Hansen, David Kelton, Gary Scott, Jose Nieves, Jeff Blauser, Kevin Ory. Kevin Ory was one of the rookies that we thought was going to be sort of the next stalwart at third base, and he just got overwhelmed, and it never worked out for Kevin Ory. Brett Barbary, Leo Gomez, Dave Magadan, Bill Miller. The Miller spelled Meuller, and it was really unfortunate. We got Bill Miller, and we thought, okay, here that we've got our third baseman now, and I thought he would have been. And he got hot, and first thing he does is he breaks his kneecap on the brick wall chasing after a foul ball over toward the third base line. And I was watching that game, and I like Bill Miller. I thought he's a good hitter, really good fielder, and I thought we have something, and then he shatters his kneecap. Miguel Cairo, William Green, Chad Myers, Mark Bellhorn, Delino DeShields, Tyler Houston, Jeff Hewson, Cole Liniak, Ramon Martinez, Lenny Harris. I mean, that's just 48 of the 117. The rest of them are even more obscure. That blows my mind that we can go that long. Really, it was what we have between Santo and Rami. You had 3 years of Madlock, 4 years of an old Ron Cey. And, speaking of Ron Cey, the Penguin, if you've never seen Ron Cey play, pull up some highlights of Ron Cey. Just a very interesting player, nicknamed the Penguin because he walked and ran like a penguin. But somehow he got it done. And so that's kind of where we are, from Santo to Rami. And then, of course, we had, past that, we had thought that maybe Chris Bryant would become that guy. Never really did. And as I'm talking to you, as I'm recording this particular video, it is December 22nd, 2023. And ask me who played third base last year, and I'm going to give you 5 or 6 names. Ask me who's going to play third base this year, and I'll tell you I don't know. So, it's more of the same. Apparently, it's hard to find a third baseman. So, Santo to Rami, and I just wanted to do some comparative. How good was Aramis Ramirez? How underrated was Rami? So, I'm going to separate it into 2 different categories, but we're going to compare Santo's numbers with Rami's numbers. And I want to do it first head-to-head with the Cubs. So we know Santo played 14 of his 15 years with the Cubs, so pretty much the bulk of his career was with the Cubs. Rami had an 18-year career, and he played 8.5 seasons with the Cubs. Came in halfway through the 03 season, and of course was a big reason we made the playoffs and had that run in 03. So the numbers are a little different. So what I've done is I just sort of extrapolated them out so they can be comparative in terms of the number of seasons that they played for the Cubs. So, you just look at the numbers and they line up, almost exact. Aramis played during his prime with the Cubs. He was 25 years old to 33 years old. And of course, Ron played from 20 to 33. So Ron had 5 extra years early in his career with the Cubs. But during those periods of time, when you averaged them out, Ron had played more games, had more plate appearances, had more at-bats, scored more runs, and had a few more hits per season. But Rami, per season, had more doubles, more home runs, more RBIs, struck out less, had a higher batting average, 294 compared to Ron's 279, and had a higher slug, 887 to Ron's 838. So when you look at pure production, Rami's 8.5 years with the Cubs compared to Santos, and it's kind of a draw. It's, they're pretty much a dead heat. So I just thought, well, let's take a bigger look. Rami, career-wise, played 18 years. Santo played 15. Santo's a Hall of Famer. You hardly hear of Aramis Ramirez. Well, let's just look at it. They line up almost unreal how close they are. So in 18 years compared to Ron's 15 years, Rami played in 2194 games. Ron played in 2243. Plate appearances, Ramos 8,986. Ron had 9,397. At bats, Rami had 8,136. Ron had 8,143. It's almost identical in ABs. Runs scored, Ramos had 1,098. Ron had 1,138. Hits, Ramos had 2,303. So 2,303 career hits. Ron has 2,254. Rami has more. Doubles, Rami had 495. Ron had 365. Rami had more. Triples, Santo had 67 to Rami's 24. Home runs, Hall of Fame Ron Santo has 342. Aramis Ramirez 386. Starts to become interesting. Now, why are we not talking about Aramis Ramirez? RBIs, Ron Santo had 1,331. Ramos had 1,417. Rami had more RBIs, had more home runs, had fewer strikeouts. Santo walked a little more. Santo had 1,108 walks. Rami had 633. Aramis Ramirez had a better batting average, career batting average of 283. Santo had 277. Ramos has a better batting average. Because Ron took more walks, his on-base percentage is a little bit higher, 362 compared to Aramis Ramirez's 341. OPS. Rami has 833 OPS to Ron's 826. I gotta tell you, you take the names off of this and you just look at it and you go, one of them is a Hall of Famer, and you would say, well, why isn't the other one? And then when you go, well, the other one is the one who had a higher OPS at third base, had a higher OPS, had a higher batting average, had fewer strikeouts, had more RBIs, had more home runs, had more hits. I mean, I don't know. I'm not complaining. I'm looking at numbers. I'm just showing you what the numbers are. Remember, this all started because I was like, how come I don't see or hear anybody talking about Aramis Ramirez? He just disappeared. I never hear anybody bring him up. And I was like, that dude was good. He was a phenomenal third baseman. So offensively, the production numbers, they're not just comparable to a Hall of Fame third baseman. They are, to me, as good or better. I mean, you could probably argue it either way if you want to. I don't think we need to. We're just, a couple of fans talking about stuff. That's what this is, by the way, just one fan talking to another. I don't have any access to anything you guys don't. I just have time, Like 3 days ago, I thought of this Aramis Ramirez thing, and I've just been thinking about it, looking stuff up, and getting my head around it. That's all. And Julie doesn't want to talk about it. I got to tell you about it. She gets lost as soon as I say, hey, you want to hear about Aramis Ramirez's OPS? She goes, no, I don't want to hear that. So I got to tell somebody. So, all right, well, offensively, well, what about defensively? Maybe Aramis was, just kicking the ball around. No. Let's just look at some numbers. Here's the other thing I do as a fan, and I think this is kind of interesting. As you know, we can go deep. Statistically, analytics, you can go as deep as you want to go. And on this particular channel, Cubs 24/7, I'm a Cub fan talking to Cub fans. And I try to give the information that I think a Cub fan would want. And by that, what I mean is, I don't need to go too deep. We just want it. We get the gist, right? I want to hear about stuff and numbers that make me go, yeah, I can see that. We don't need to get into the minutia of it. And I know I like to stick to a lot of the old school stat lines. That's okay, because I'm just a fan. This is what fans know of. We're not diving into the minutia. But when you look at just the overall numbers, the stat lines that we're comfortable with, that we've been using forever, that we can relate to because we've been using them forever, Rami lines up with Ron Santo beautifully. So let's do defensive numbers. Okay, let's just start with fielding percentages, right? They're third baseman. Fielding percentages, Ron has a career fielding percentage of .954. Pretty good. It's Hall of Fame fielding percentage. Well, what's Rami's? Well, Rami's is .952. So 954 to 952. Huh. That's interesting. Fielding errors. Well, what about errors, right? How many errors does both of them make? Well, Ron had 317 career errors. What did Rami have? 500? No. Rami had only 244. Ron has more errors. Huh. That's weird. Assists. Ron had 4,581. Rama had 3,627. So it looks like Santo probably had a little more range, got to more balls, made some more plays. That makes sense too. Ron Santo was a 9-time All-Star. Aramis Ramirez was a 3-time All-Star. I don't know. Rami did get several MVP votes. He was receiving MVP votes, so he wasn't, completely, didn't disappear completely. Ron Santo had 5 Gold Gloves. Rami doesn't have any. No Gold Gloves. Rami did win a Silver Slugger, however. So I'm just really blown away at the numbers and how they compare, and why Aramis doesn't have more of a reputation for what he did. Phenomenal career, 18 years, clutch player, kind of a, he hit, I think predominantly as a kind of 5-hole hitter, which is where Santo was. Before Banks got old, Santo was in the 5 spot behind Williams, Banks. I mean, they're just so comparable. and what they did with the Cubs. So, you know, Cub third baseman. I mean, it's been a while. I don't know when it's going to change. I can't say that I got a change coming, but since Santo left that '74 season to Aramis in '03, and then Aramis left left us shortly thereafter, 8.5 years later, and we're still looking for a third baseman full time. Must be hard to find. If you get one, hang on to it. So that's Aramis Ramirez. I felt like he was underrated. Turns out he is, and we need to talk more about Aramis Ramirez and what he meant to the Cubs during that period of time, how good of a player he was. So hope you enjoyed that. I really had a good time last few days digging through this, and some of the stuff it's really interesting to see how things play out and how things can get hidden. So hope you enjoyed it. I look forward to seeing you next time here on Cubs 24/7, and go Cubs go.